Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our Talks with Walt, as we have called our Readings Through the Deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to the poem, So Long! Exclamation point. This is poem 17 of the 17 of Songs of Parting. Many have wished to argue that this is really the last poem of the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, which is why the last two sections are called annexes. And I'm not going to argue that there's a real reason to see this. I think Whitman himself believed that there's a good reason to keep reading these other poems. But you would be hard-pressed to find a poem as powerful as So Long in either of the two annexes that are to follow as we're finishing our study of Leaves of Grass, the 89 poems remaining, if you wish to think of it that way, depending on how you count. And I should say this, guys, depending on how you count. I mean, think of it. You did the 19 poems of inscriptions. You did all of the, you did the 24 poems of inscriptions. You did the 19 sections of Paumanok. You did the 52 kind of separate poems of Song of Myself. And from there on, to include all of the poems remaining up to now, you've done about 343 poems if you've been reading with us at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist. And so it's time for congratulations. If you've been doing this work with us and read this much to get here, then you are ready to understand why So Long can be understood in two ways. As in, so long, I've been reading so many of these poems, and so long, which is that goodbye. Now there's a whole lot of this idea of like, where does this come from? Is it the salam or the shalom of the Arabic and the Hebrew tradition? Well, those are more like hellos than they are goodbyes. We're going to make the argument that if you know about this phrase, so long as in goodbye, you probably know about it because of this poem. And it is true, one of the more famous poems of Leaves of Grass. I think a lot of readers like to think about this as the last poem because it is such a personal reading. If the previous poem, sure, was more Whitman talking to himself about leaving, now he's going to speak directly to you, and the intimacy with which he's able to do this. Whitman as prophet, even though that's not really one of our 5 Ps. We're assuming that you've been with us, that you have watched and listened to the intro to Songs of Parting, so that way you'll understand a little bit what I mean when I talk about those 5 Ps. And of course, we just finished with Shore. Now, our Nortons will tell us that this farewell poem, and this is a tradition of many poets, that they will provide the poetic envoy, the tradition of the poetic envoy, that is to say, saying goodbye to a work and maybe to its readers. This farewell poem, my songs cease, I abandon them, has terminated Leaves of Grass ever since the 3rd edition of 1860, although considerably revised in text, if not in essential meaning. For the 1867 edition, 21 lines were canceled in accordance with Walt Whitman's revised Leaves of Grass 1860 blue copy, as it's often referred to, and 3 lines were added in the 1871 edition. Whitman excluded earlier passages that struck a brasher note, producing in the final revision a certain humility and quiet confidence in ultimate recognition when America does what was promised. And then to me and mine, our due fruition, end quote. Lines 53, 54, and 64, 65 are paraphrased from Leaves of Grass number 24 in Leaves of Grass 1860, which then became Now Lift Me Close in 1867. Reappeared as To the Reader at Parting in Passage to India 1871, and in successive combinations of that supplement with Leaves of Grass 1872, and then was dropped altogether. William Sloane Kennedy, in his Fight of a Book for the World, notes that Whitman was early in using the expression so long, and that when he asked the poet to define it, Whitman replied, quote, now this is Whitman on the title So Long. He said, a salutation of departure greatly used among sailors, go back to the last 2 words of the previous poem, Old Sailor, sports, which means pals, and prostitutes. Interesting. The sense of it is till we meet again, conveying an inference that somehow they will doubtless so meet sooner or later, end quote. Now I love all of the different layers that are played in So Long. You'll remember the use of the word long in Song of Myself to have you practiced so long to learn to read. And you'll remember that when we found that set of lines, we mused on the fact that we were so early into Leaves of Grass. Now, of course, as we go back, it is compelling, isn't it, to take a look at this poem and to read it now in the context of all the reading that you've done. So one more time, let me congratulate you for making it this far. And even though, of course, we still have a few poems remaining, many of you will argue that I'll read those poems, but I somehow will look back and say, this maybe is the poem that I hold on to most profoundly as I finish my study of Leaves of Grass. In fact, I love this poem so much, no pun intended with the word so, that I want to just enjoy reading it. The rhythms of this poem are beautiful. The tenor and the voice of this poem is compelling. You're going to find some radical language here. There will be some sexual language that for Whitman's audience was fairly controversial. He will use the phrase, I announce, some 15 times. In other words, Whitman is prophet, prognosticator, and the like. I believe there's a lot of Hamlet in Leaves of Grass. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. You can run that to ground in your own time in your study. However, you'll remember that at the conclusion of Hamlet Act 1, Scene 7, that Hamlet's father saying to Hamlet, as he gives him his commission to go and get revenge, you'll remember that he keeps saying to him, adieu, adieu, and then he'll say, remember me, remember me. And I think there's a whole lot of that going on in this poem as well. We'll point it out when we get to the Hamlet sections. And in some ways, this is the great culminating poem, and I think Whitman knew it as such and wanted it to be such. So we'll enjoy it, we'll read it. So long. To conclude, I announce what comes after me. I remember I said before my leaves sprang at all, I would raise my voice jocund and strong with reference to consummations. When America does what was promised, when through these states walk 100 millions of superb persons, when the rest part away for superb persons and contribute to them, when breeds of the most perfect mothers denote America, then, to me and mine, our due fruition. I've pressed through in my own right. I've sung the body and the soul, war and peace have I sung, and the songs of life and death, and the songs of birth, and shown that there are many births. I've offered my style to everyone. I've journeyed with confident step. While my pleasure is yet at the full, I whisper, so long. And take the young woman's hand and the young man's hand for the last time. I announce natural persons to arise. I announce justice triumphant. I announce uncompromising liberty and equality. I announce the justification of candor and the justification of pride. I announce that the identity of these states is a single identity only. I announce the union more and more compact, indissoluble. I announce splendors and majesties to make all the previous politics of the earth insignificant. I announce adhesiveness. I say it shall be limitless, unloosened. I say you shall yet find the friend you were looking for. I announce a man or woman coming. Perhaps you are the one. So long. I announce the great individual, fluid as nature, chaste, affectionate, compassionate, fully armed. I announce a life that shall be copious, vehement, spiritual, bold. I announce an end that shall lightly and joyfully meet its translation. I announce myriads of youths, beautiful, gigantic, sweet-blooded. I announce a race of splendid and savage old men. Oh, thicker and faster. So long. Oh, crowding too close upon me, I foresee too much. It means more than I thought. It appears to me I am dying. Hasten, throat, and sound your last. Salute me. Salute the days once more. Peal the old cry once more. Screaming electric, the atmosphere using at random, glancing each as I notice, absorbing swiftly on, but a little while alighting, curious enveloped messages delivering, sparkles hot, seed ethereal down in the dirt dropping, myself unknowing, my commission obeying, to answer it never daring, to ages and ages yet the growth of the seed leaving, to troops out of the war arising, they the tasks I have set promulging, to women certain whispers of myself bequeathing their affection, me more clearly explaining, to young men my problems offering, no dally or I the muscle of their brains trying. So I pass a little time vocal, visible, contrary. Afterward, a melodious echo, passionately bent for, death making me really undying. The best of me then, when no longer visible, for toward that I have been incessantly preparing. What is there more that I lag and pause and crouch extended with unshut mouth? Is there a single final farewell? My songs cease. I abandon them. From behind the screen where I hid, I advance personally, solely to you. Camaretto, this is no book. Who touches this touches a man. Is it night? Are we here together? Alone? It is I you hold, and who holds you. I spring from the pages into your arms. Decrease calls me forth. Oh, how your fingers drowse me, your breath falls around me like dew, your pulse lulls the tympans of my ears. I feel emerged from head to foot, delicious, enough. Enough, O deed impromptu and secret. Enough, O gliding present. Enough, O summed up past. Dear friend, whoever you are, take this kiss. I give it especially to you. Do not forget me. I feel like one who has done work for the day to retire a while. I receive now again of my many translations from my avatars ascending while others doubtless await me. An unknown sphere, more real than I dreamed, more direct, darts, awakening rays about me. So long. Remember my words. I may again return. I love you. I depart from materials. I am as one disembodied, triumphant, dead. Now, there are few poems in Leaves of Grass that have the ability to reach out and grab you, the reader, in the way that this poem will. We will want to now ask, why? What is it that makes this poem so startlingly amazing? We'll begin with the ironies of To Conclude. Notice he ends with this notion of concluding, and yet the entire poem is about something, it seems, other than concluding. By the way, the phrase to conclude is one and only one time in all Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. I announce what comes after me. When we started together, my, how long ago was it? When we started together, I told you that very first word in the deathbed edition, that word come, as an invitational word, and here it is now being used at the very end. I announce what comes after me. In other words, this is the legacy. And of course we saw that poem in that very title, right? This is the legacy. This is the challenge. What comes after me? And then the idea of I remember, and then of course by the end of the poem it's remember me, right? I remember, you go back to Song of Myself 38 for that one. I said before my leaves sprang at all. And of course the brilliance of this is a book of poems called Leaves of Grass, right? I would raise my voice jocund, you'll remember that one from Return of the Hero 7, and strong with reference to consumptions. It's the only time in Leaves of Grass that it gets used. And do you remember in Hamlet 3 in the to be or not to be speech, 'tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. This there's so much Hamlet, I think, going on here. And then this idea of what the future looks like. Notice the when, then. Now go back to our study of of Chaucer's prologue to the Canterbury Tales, that introductory set of 20 lines, when, then. And then go back to our study of Keats, When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be, that sonnet, when, then. Here, notice it's four whens with a then. When America does what? In other words, this is the calling, and this is why Whitman, let's just say it out loud, this is why Whitman's the greatest poet. Certainly America's greatest poet. No question about it. This is why. Why? Because, notice, I told you when he uses America, it's significant. Because he'll say it. When America does what was promised, that's the goal, that's the challenge, that's what all of us are working towards. In other words, we will never arrive as a country because we're always aspiring. When through these states, notice capitalized, walk, of course that motif is central from Song of Myself 46, 47, and of course Song of the Open Road. Walk 100 millions, notice he loves again this exaggeration of number, of superb, remember that from starting from Pomenock 13 persons, when the rest part away for superb persons and contribute to them. In other words, we celebrate excellence. That's the whole point of Whitman. Everyone gets to celebrate the thing that's most excellent about them. When breeds of the most perfect mothers denote America, of course, go back to his great poem, his celebration of his own mother. Finally, after all those whens, then to me and mine, our drew fruition. Do you remember in Song of the Open Road 14, he says about, now understand me well, it's provided in the very essence of things that from any fruition to success, a greater struggle will be necessary. His use of that word fruition brings us back here. And now the next section. I have pressed. Now notice the sexual language that's being played with here. I've pressed through in my own right. I've sung the body and the soul. Notice again all the tenses here about what I've done. War and peace, we know about that, right? And war and peace, of course, to the O cause comes back, right? And you'll remember what he said there. My book and the war are one. Have I sung, and the songs of life and death, and the songs of birth, and shown that there are many births. Go back to Song of Myself, passage 6. One of the things this poem does, it's brilliant to me, is that, and I even recognized it again as I was just reading it for you guys just now, is how much this poem makes me want to go back and reread all those great poems again, to just hear these, the echoes is the very word he uses in this poem, right? Notice, now he's going to try to say what he's done, and he goes to his style, which is significant, because when, for example, Norton's, who we've been referencing so much as our helper, when Norton's put together a collection of modern poetry, guess who gets first billing? And then they just move chronologically from who? Walt Whitman, right? He says it this way, offered my style to everyone. I've journeyed with confident step. Go back to Song of Myself, passage 1, Song of the Open Road. While my pleasure, again back to the idea of being pressed and now pleasure with sexual language, is yet at the full and then whisper. Of course, he's used the word whisper so brilliantly in Leaves of Grass. And then we'll have 4 times in this poem so long, as in goodbye or hello. No, so long will remind us of facing west from California shore, the proud music of the storm 6. And he says, I take the young woman's hand. Think about what we said about his understanding of Milton Paradise Lost and holding hands. And the young man's hand for the last time. In other words, hey, okay, this is my last chance. And this takes us, of course, back to Brooklyn Ferry. I mean, it always seems that it comes back to Brooklyn Ferry, doesn't it? Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. The idea that I'm right here and I'm holding you. You're not holding me, I'm holding you. It's quite compelling. And now he gets to these I announce. And we're going to see, again, a number of these. 15 times now we're going to get these, right? I announce natural persons to arise. This is what, for him, is greatest about America and Americans. They understand the natural. They understand the beauty of nature. Justice, triumphant. We've seen all of this already, haven't we? You'll remember triumphant now is going to be used as the second to the last word in this poem, triumphant. And we've seen the power of that word in Leaves of Grass. I announce uncompromising liberty and equality. Think of it. Justice, liberty, equality. Those are the words that he now says, this is what America must be. I announce the justification of candor and the justification of pride. Wow, there it is. In other words, yeah, we are. We do have pride in America. Absolutely we do. As I've said to you guys many times, if you're not a patriot of your country, it's not your fault. It's the fault of people like myself who haven't given you enough reason. And I think one of the places you get there to be a patriot, can you be a patriot and still see all the problems and the faults in your country. Yeah, there was a guy called Walt Whitman who figured that out. But notice here in the end, it's about candor and it's about pride. I announce the identity of these states as a single identity only. There it is. There's your union. After the war, there's this theodicy. Why did this have to happen? Not to us, but for us. To show us, to demonstrate to us, we got to be together. We cannot be apart. We got to be a single identity. I announce, notice capitalized, the union, more and more compact, and then of course, indissoluble. Cannot be ruptured. I announce splendors and majesties to make all the previous politics of the earth insignificant. His idea of political evolution, of course, some Hegel going on there. And then I announce adhesiveness. Now, our Nortons will tell us about this adhesiveness term, which obviously we've seen a number of times. It's a phrenology term designating the faculty of friendship used by Whitman in his earlier poems to designate manly comradeship. You'll remember it in the Calamus section. There is much in his writings an attitude to suggest that later he broadened his reference to include friendship between man and woman woman as well. Pals, if you will. You'll remember this adhesiveness from not heaving from my rib breasts only. I say it shall be adhesiveness limitless. Go back to Song of Myself 5. Limitless are the leaves. And unloosened. You'll remember this from Warble for Lilac Time. I say you shall yet find the friend. We would say today pal, right? It is a favorite word of Leaves of Grass. Friend, friendly, friendliness. You were looking for. In other words, keep trying, keep searching. You will find somebody who can be your pal. And you can be their pal. And in the process, maybe Whitman becomes your pal. I announce a man or a woman coming. Back to the word, come. Perhaps, I love his use of that word, perhaps. You'll remember it from Song of Myself 46 best, right? Perhaps it's on land and sea. Perhaps you are the one. And then, of course, in parenthetics, so long. I announce the great individual. Fluid, as nature. He learned that, of course, from his study of Emerson, didn't he? Chaste, that is to say, you got to be intentional in your being a pal, right?